What is going on, Every Nation? Jon Impemba here with Eric Romoff. It is Fantasy Football Thursday Night Football Preview Week 10. We got Bengals. We got Ravens. Should be a fun Thursday Night Football game, at least for us to watch here this week as we inch closer and closer to Fantasy Football playoffs. I don't know about your leagues, Eric. My leagues kick off Week 14, so a couple of weeks away from Fantasy Football playoffs. It's scary to think how quickly the season has come and gone already.
Yeah, a couple weeks away, depending on your format and your settings, but still plenty of time to change your lot in life, your set of circumstances. I think it was our friend Andrew Cooper sent out a tweet earlier today with all of the league winners of recent years that were picked up in weeks 11, 12, 13, 14, right? So
Yeah.
feels like the season's getting a little long in the tooth, but we still have plenty of time to influence our fortune.
100%. But we are here to answer your fantasy football questions and get you guys ready for tonight's main slate of DFS, betting, pick 'em, and of course, help you set your lineups for NFL Week 10. So if you have any comments or
Yeah.
questions, throw them in the chat. If you're not yet a member of the Fantasy Alarm family, you got that for a 7-day free trial code up on the screen. You can scan that, take advantage of our offer right now, fantasyalarm.com/win, promo code let's go. That first month after your 7-day free trial is less than $20. It's like $19.98. So really no better time than now to take advantage of that offer. And of course, we always have our annual package going on, 40% off the monthly cost. So you can go get a big discount. If you sign up for a year, that gives you access to everything we got going on site here. Eric, let's talk about tonight's game. We'll kick that off. Again, we got Baltimore, we got Cincinnati, got a battle in the AFC North. Bengals on the road here. They're 4-5 on the year. Ravens are 6-3. Baltimore is a 6.5-point home favorite. The total, like I said, could be a fun one tonight. 52.5 points. I think that might be the highest we've seen on Thursday Night Football. In terms of fantasy, there is plenty of goodness here. Both defenses really struggle against the pass. Bengals have been hit or miss against the run, obviously. A lot of fantasy high-end performers in this matchup. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Jamar Chase, Zay Flowers, Joe Burrow, even, Andrews, Gesicki. So this should be a good one for those who have players in this game.
Yeah, it absolutely should be, right? I was trying to do the math in my head and recall if there was another Thursday night game that had a total north of 50. 52 is certainly the highest total on the board in week number 10, and it is a fraction of what these teams put up a few short weeks ago.
Right.
Back in the first week of October, these teams tallied up 79 points in total. It was an absolute bonanza. Let's hope that we have a lot of the same story this week.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, we had, was it 5 touchdown passes in that game from Joe
Yeah.
Burrow. Obviously, the running upside with both Jackson and Derrick Henry. We did see, this week Zach Moss goes down. The Bengals then go and trade for Khalil Herbert. By all accounts and reports today, Herbert's going to be available to make his debut. How do you think they work him in tonight? And what do you think is their long-term view of Khalil Herbert in this backfield?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? Like the jokes out on Twitter were that that Chase Brown running back one season lasted for like 12 and a half hours, right? But I don't know if this is necessarily a death nail in that narrative, right? I think if they were looking for someone to complement Chase Brown and to take a good amount of his workload, they would probably go out and get like a Zach Moss type, right? Like a bit more of an early down thumper sort of profile. The fact that their skill sets are so duplicative, I think it's more so that Chase Brown is coming in here just to spell, or rather, Khalil Herbert is coming in here just to spell Chase Brown, right?
Yeah.
He is clearly not the type of runner that can get 27 plus touches every single week. So I wouldn't be surprised if we still see Chase Brown get 65, 70, 75% of the opportunity out of this backfield. And Khalil Herbert's really just going to come in to give him a breather. Joe Burrow was kind enough to tell us a little bit about their intentions for his usage tonight. He said that he knows Khalil Herbert is an outstanding pass blocker and pass pro,
Yep.
but he doesn't know if he can pick up that system quite this quickly. So really the plan tonight for Khalil Herbert is just a little bit of work spelling Chase Brown.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I figured this would still be a Chase Brown backfield. We saw, Chicago try to use him in a bunch of different scenarios. Red zone work,
Mhm.
and occasionally on passing down. They tried him as a lead back. None of it ever stuck. So that's why, I don't think there's a reason to go in here and to think all of a sudden there's just going to be this massive timeshare split. I think Brown is going to carry a pretty heavy workload in this offense moving forward while they work Herbert into sort of some bit of a rotation. Obviously, it's a good handcuff to grab. He was available in leagues. Selling Andrew Cooper last week. Yeah, I made the decision looking at the waiver wire to try to be a bit predictive of which running back might get moved. And I was going back and forth between Miles Sanders and Khalil Herbert. I ended up grabbing Sanders. Sanders doesn't get moved. Herbert does. I had to use some fab money this week, unfortunately, then to grab Herbert, which I could have saved myself some money in the flip side of that because I was a Moss manager. So hindsight would have been cool to have Herbert ahead of time. On the other side of this matchup, another running back expected to make their debut, Keaton Mitchell, off the IR, went through warmups and expected to play tonight. Obviously, this is a Derrick Henry backfield, but Justice Hill's been getting a good amount of work this year as well. At times this season, he's actually outsnapped Derrick Henry, depending on the game flow. What do you think Keaton Mitchell's role is going to be in this Ravens offense?
Yeah, on the whole, I would suspect that he takes a lot of that Justice Hill work, and like Justice Hill, will largely be dependent on the game flow. I think it's kind of a shame that tonight is his first game back, because this would have been a perfect proving ground for how they want to use him. I think this game is going to be fast paced. It's going to shoot out. Las Vegas tends to agree with that. But I don't know if they're going to throw him right back into the fire immediately, right? But ultimately, I think it's really a matter of how much of that work does he chisel away from Justice Hill. Justice Hill, he's played 9 games. He's got
Mm-hmm.
32 rushing attempts. He has seen 25 receptions. That's really what is up for grabs. And
Yeah.
in his performance down the stretch run last year, Keaton Mitchell showed that he can do a lot with a little. So I think he's in a very interesting stash, although I don't think he's going to make much of an impact here in week number 10.
Sure. I got a couple of questions already popping in the chat. I'll throw them up on the screen for us here. Toro wants to know, he's 7-2. Should he hold on to CD Lamb? Obviously, reports coming that Dak could be placed on IR by the end of the week, which would cost him the next 4 weeks, which probably ends up costing him the season because we don't think the Cowboys are likely to win many games, and probably unlikely then to just force Dak back at the end of the year when their season's pretty much over. CD Lamb himself may not play this week as he's dealing with his own injury. Would you be looking to move on from CD Lamb? Obviously, depending on what the return would be, but what's your overall view now of just the Dallas Cowboys offense and Lamb in general?
Yeah, that's kind of the tricky thing, right? I would be willing to move on from CeeDee Lamb, as I am willing to move on from anybody for a price. I don't think that you're going to get the requisite value in the trade market for CeeDee Lamb, which, I mean, you should be getting, wide receiver number 1 overall
Yeah.
type of price tag, and I don't think he's going to command that. So he's pretty clearly a hold. In terms of my outlook on the Cowboys offense, I mean, Cooper Rush is certainly no Dak Prescott, but Dak
Right.
Prescott going down doesn't suddenly make the Cowboys an effective running team, right? Like they're
Mm-hmm.
still going to have to throw the ball a ton, despite Jerry Jones's infatuation with Jonathan Mingo. The vast majority of those targets are going to go CeeDee Lamb's direction, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
does he have the same like 35, 40 point upside that he flashed, towards the end of the year last year? Probably not, but he's still going to be their primary target and a very, very viable fantasy piece.
Yeah, I agree with you. I obviously saw all the Trey Lance calls too after the
Yeah,
Dak
that'll be fun.
Prescott injury, and listening to the Fantasy Alarm show as well. Andrew Cooper, Jim Bowden were talking about it the other day, and it's like, do we see Trey Lance on the field? Like, they kind of know what Cooper Rush is. Yes, he's got a good winning percentage in his career, but if they lose, this week, I mean, they're even further out of the race, right? Like Philly and Washington will be the 1-2 teams in the AFC East, NFC East, rather, no real chance for Dallas to make a play. Do you think that there's a chance that they just give Lance a look? I mean, we know what his tools are. We know he can run. We know he's got a big arm. He's never done it at a high level. Again, where he played at college wasn't all that competitive. He had the 1 year in college. He kind of flamed out in San Francisco. Do you think it's just that they've seen him practice and they know he can't play? What's the motivation to play Cooper Rush here over Trey Lance?
Oh man, trying to diagnose the motivation and the inner workings of the Cowboys front office can be maddening.
Yeah.
What I would do is certainly look to fire up Trey Lance. Maybe not in week 1, right? Like the team is kind of reeling off of this, this skid of a losing streak. They're reeling at the idea of Dak Prescott potentially being gone for the season. So, the stability of a Cooper Rush, someone that's familiar with the system, has shown an ability to at least be replacement level at distributing the ball. Like I can see why there's a case for starting him this week. But as we get into the doldrums of the back quarter of the season, and there's really nothing to be excited about with this Cowboys offense, I don't see why they wouldn't trot out Trey Lance and just kind of see what they have in the guy, either, inflating his trade value, or, maybe they're the ones that finally unlock him and they get a little bit of flexibility with, potentially entering into the trade market with Dak Prescott. Very, very unlikely, but certainly not things that are going to be part of the conversation if you just trot out Cooper Rush for the duration.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Smitty here, his team is Purdy, Stafford, Flacco, May. So I'm assuming with all these in Jones, I'm guessing. Okay, here we go. 2 QB
league. Yeah.
I was like, we had to be in a super flex or 2 QB league here. He's got Mason, Ramondre, Monty Brown, London, Dell, Evans. Okay, someone needs a quarterback, and I'm in a 2 QB league. Okay, second part of the question. His team is Hurts, Anthony Richardson. So basically, what should he trade? Which quarterback should he trade, and where should he be looking to make an improvement? DK Adams, McLeod. I mean, running back's not terrible with Stevenson, Montgomery, and Brown. Jordan Mason, Christian McCaffrey is expected to play this week. That report came out just before we went live, so you got to assume he takes a step back. Gesicki, Hawkinson, you're good there. London. Is Jen supposed to be Jeff, like Jefferson? What would Jen be?
Maybe
Jennings?
Juwan Jennings. That's what I was trying to
Dell Evans,
decipher too.
Adams, McLeod, Myers. I mean, I like Jacoby Myers right now in the situation that he's in. Basically number 1 wide receiver in that offense, regardless of who the quarterback is. Stafford's your second best quarterback there too. There's a lot of risk. And maybe try to flip Flacco for Jacoby Myers. Maybe they'd be willing to do that. Myers being their 3rd wide receiver. Probably could pull that off. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a tricky spot, right? Looking at your stable of quarterbacks, oddly enough, the only one I definitively don't want to move on from is Drake May. Sure. And that is because he is the one thing that is not like the others, right? He is the one guy that can give you a little bit of rushing upside. It's probably going to be ugly at times.
95 yards last week.
Yeah, exactly. So if nothing else, I think I want to sort of speculate in the Drake May market, because you have kind of your traditional pocket passers locked up in Purdy, Stafford, and Flacco. So I would honestly, Flacco would be the one I would want to move on from the most, because the other thing I was thinking of,
he's got Richardson, so he kind of has the handcuff to that Colts quarterback situation, right? So
I think of all the teams in your league, this is the one that would have that would be most coveting Joe Flacco. So moving on from him, honestly, it would be hard to do, but I would look to try to secure a little bit of upside in your running back room, right? Chase Brown looks phenomenal, but as we talked about off the top, he's not going to be getting 25 plus touches every single week. So, he will come back to earth a little bit. Maybe trying to move into the Aaron Jones business from a Ramondre or from a David Montgomery. That could be an interesting angle. Beyond that, I think it's really just kind of looking for depth. These are guys that you can get in return for Flacco, whether it's a Myers, whether it's a McLeod, that will fill a spot and kind of balance your team out a little bit more. But overall, I think what you have trotted out there is pretty interesting. and a very competitive team. So just trying to find incremental gains.
Yeah, you could try to flip him Flacco and like you said, Ramondre Stevenson, and see if you could get an upgrade at running back, with Jacoby Myers or something like that. But it all depends on what that guy's willing to move. So he's motivated for a quarterback if he's in a 2 QB league, and all he has is Richardson and Hurts there. So he needs that second quarterback, and you've clearly cornered the market on available quarterbacks there. So.
You've been waiting for this exact moment.
Waiting for this moment, exactly. He probably out fab bidded the Richardson owner for Flacco too, just to trade it to him. Hunt and Pacheco for Chase Brown for a deal here. Obviously, Pacheco expected to come back, so again, you're basically trading the Chiefs backfield for Chase Brown. I don't know. Are you getting? I assume you're the one getting Brown. If I have Brown, I don't think I'm doing that deal, because I don't know what that situation is it could just be a split, right? Like you trade a guy that has a job for 2 guys that might split a job.
Yeah, that's really my read on this as well, right? Granted, Chase Brown now has Khalil Herbert in that backfield to take some of the work away. I don't think what's the best way to frame this? I think it's less likely that Khalil Herbert competes for a meaningful amount of touches than it is that we see some sort of meaningful split between Hunt and Pacheco, right? And generally, not a big fan of going out and acquiring players that are coming back from injury. It's just it's such a roll of the dice, and you also have the roster dynamics here too, right? If you're potentially talking about moving Chase Brown out, you're gonna have to cut someone to pick up that second player, right?
Yeah.
On the other side, if you're consolidating to Chase Brown, maybe there's someone that you've had your eye on the waiver that you now have a roster spot for, right?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you 100% there. Should I trade Adams and Hopkins for Jonathan Taylor? I mean, that feels a bit much to give up for Taylor. I don't know what your running back situation looks like, and then what your wide receivers look like. But Devontae Adams, obviously coming off of a big game, Hopkins coming off a big game. If your idea is like you're trading high, I don't know if you need to trade 2 of those for Taylor personally. Maybe package one with a lesser player, but those 2 guys also have like incredibly high ceilings. If what we saw last week was sort of like the kickoff point, for what to expect. Hopkins is only in his second week, with Kansas City. He had the 2 touchdown game, and Adams, finally getting into a groove with the big touchdown catch at the end of last week. So, what are your thoughts here?
Very, very similar thoughts overall, right? I get what you're trying to do here, Ryan, in terms of selling high on both of these players. But I think this is one of those cases where you could probably sell high on both of them, but each in their own individual deal and get a bit more back in return. This feels like it's a little bit rich for me. I would look to, pair up Hopkins with maybe like a fringe flexy type of running back to go after JT, maybe even a lesser running back. That style of deal to where, you're not just kind of, zapping all of your wide receiver depth to get incrementally better at the running back position.
Yeah, it's kind of where I'm with you as well. Ralph wants to know, I've been streaming Ingram and Ferguson with Lance, Olave, and Dak all being out. Should I drop Ferguson for Taysom Hill? No. Cooper Rush would just throw to the tight end, I think. I'd rather keep Ferguson there.
Yeah, kind of going back to the Lamb analysis, right? Like Dallas is not suddenly going to be capable of moving the ball on the ground. They're still going to have to throw the ball a ton. They've already been throwing the ball a ton.
Yeah.
To your point, John, right? Like now Cooper Rush is probably far more likely to look to the short to intermediate part of the field that Ferguson occupies than Dak otherwise might be.
Yep, I agree. I think Ferguson's probably a safer play. I mean, Taysom, sure, I get it. But, they are getting healthier at the running back position, is Taysom. So if you're thinking maybe he plays more wide receiver, there's just too much of a bad floor. Where Ferguson, especially if Lamb ends up being out, could be the number 1 receiver on that team. So I'd rather keep Ferguson there. Are we playing Keaton Mitchell in DFS tonight? I'm in the 20 max. I got 2 lineups with Keaton Mitchell, just because. You never know. He breaks a long run or he catches a couple of balls. Like, who knows? It's showdown DFS. I got 2 lineups with Keaton Mitchell of the 20 there, Mr. Grapefruit. So, again,
10% sounds about right.
It'd be 1 or 2,
maybe,
right?
Maybe a lot of it is just kind of looking at this sort of super saver class of players, right? These
Yeah.
sub 3K guys, like, if you want to split hairs between him and Burton or Williams, maybe, but I mean, as I'm getting down to this part of the of the player pool, there aren't
Yeah.
really a whole lot of appealing options. So I think I'll probably end up with a bit more than that, but I mean, certainly not north of 20%.
Yeah, Burton is someone I do actually have a decent amount of. By all accounts, he's on the field, pregame warmups. He's working and catching balls from Joe Burrow. So whatever, well, we know what happened. He didn't show up to the Saturday walkthrough for whatever reason. I don't know. We know this kid has off-field issues. It's one of the reasons he fell. It's one of the reasons he's benched as he was, and all these things. But the idea that he was about to get this big step up in work and then he just didn't show up to work on Saturday, it's kind of wild to me. But it's a Thursday. It was a short week. He was able to show up, and by all accounts, they're ready to go with Burton. So I got Burton in my lineup in probably about half, at 2,200. It just helps you kind of spend down there. So Byron wants to know, I have Chase Brown as an option. My others are Hall, Achane, and Connor. Would you play Brown tonight, or would you play Achane versus what's the Miami got in this matchup this week? Guess I should have had the schedule open. Miami this week is playing.
Miami has the Rams this week.
Okay, that's not bad. So you got Achane versus the Rams, which I do like. Connor has the Jets, and Hall has the Cardinals. So it is a standard scoring.
That's kind of tricky.
I make Sid Brown, honestly. The Ravens have a good run defense. It's their pass defense that's bad.
Yeah,
Connor's a little banged up too, though. So maybe that's the play. You sit James Conner, play Chase Brown, Breece Hall, and Devin Achane.
Yeah, it's hard to make this Connor call at this point in the week. It's kind of maddening that you're having to make this decision, these four guys for one spot, right? So I would, on the macro level, I would look to try to pair up one of these guys in the trade market and see if you can't upgrade at another position.
I think you ultimately have to play Brown tonight because if Connor ends up being ruled out, then you're kind of stuck, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would fire up Chase Brown. I mean, for whatever it's worth, I've got Chase Brown one spot ahead of James Conner this week.
I like Achane versus Byron. Can you only play one running back? Maybe I'm just thinking about this incorrectly, because I would play Achane over all of them if I had to pick one.
I think I would too. Standard kind of scares me off a little bit, right? Like a lot of Achane's productivity with Tua in the lineup is as a receiver, right? So you're kind of whittling away at some of that upsad. But
yeah, he had the big touchdown run last week, obviously, but he needs to be able to break those, right? Because generally the red zone,
right? Yeah. And looking at like kind of a touchdown or bust type of scenario is a bit scary. I'd probably go Chase Brown over Achane here. But I mean, we're splitting hairs, right?
Yeah,
like
it's
all
close.
Four of these are fine choices.
All really good running backs, Byron. So if you want to go Brown, the one thing with Brown, again, I feel pretty confident in the touches for him, knowing that Herbert just got there. So Albert popping in saying hello. And wants to know PPR and a tight end premium, Herbert, McLeod, Shepard, or Chigakonkwo here. Don't think I'm playing Herbert of that group. So obviously we have a little bit more time, but McLeod, we don't know Drake London's status this week. Shepard, again, the wide receivers in Tampa Bay are down, and then Chigakonkwo for a tight end premium league.
Yeah, this one actually might get made for us. I think Sterling Shepard is dealing with some injuries as well. His availability is in doubt, so you might be making a decision between McLeod and Chigakonkwo. I know the tight end premium is appealing, but I think I would err on the side of McLeod here. I mean, in the event that Drake London is out, it's pretty clearly McLeod. But I mean, Chig has really struggled to get just about anything going this year, right? His season high for receptions is 4. His season high for fantasy points is 9.5. Granted, that being in a PPR, but I think you're probably going to get a bit more out of Ray McLeod.
I agree. Yep, no arguments here. Who's best captain in a 3-person field? Probably Henry.
That has to be 3 max, right? Not 3 person. If it's 3 person, then it's certainly Henry or maybe Lamar.
Yeah, it's Henry, Lamar, or Chase. I know we're not telling you anything you wouldn't already know. I think I'd probably lean Derrick Henry there, but yeah, it'll probably be super 3-person field. You might all have the same captain, so at that point, so maybe look to see where you're going. But I think I'd go Derrick Henry. Need 2 Roshan, Singletary, Tolbert, Parker Washington, Shepard in PPR.
So we mentioned the injury concern for Shepard. The reporting that I was reading seemed to be somewhat pessimistic about his availability this week. So that's coming down to it. This is a tough spot. I think I'm firing up Tolbert and Parker Washington in the event that Shepard doesn't play.
Yeah.
In the event that Shepard does, I would put him in probably over Tolbert. You also have to watch the CD Lamb availability, right?
Yeah, being a Patriots fan, it is a super interesting week for the Bears running backs of how bad the Patriots run defense is. Now, Swift is obviously going to carry all of that workload, but it would not shock me at all if like Roshan was able to get a touchdown out of this week.
I mean, that's the thing, right? With especially over the last month or so, like if the Bears get inside the 5-yard line, Roshan is getting the ball and he's scoring a touchdown.
Yeah,
he converts those goal line touches at a ridiculous clip.
The
right?
Patriots lost to Jacksonville Jaguars because they had 22 of their final 23 plays were running plays last week in overtime. Tony Pollard ran the ball all the way down the field on them in overtime, so they just have no ability to stop the run. I love DeAndre Swift in DFS this week, but again, I would be willing to throw a nickel on a Roshan anytime touchdown this week too. I think.
Yeah, I could totally see that. It's just his involvement is so
super low.
Right?
I agree with you.
2, 3, 5 touches at best.
Yep. Ingram or Ferguson in PPR?
Ooh, I think I'm actually going to go with Ingram here. I know he's been a little lackluster by the standards that we had for him, but he edges out Ferguson by 2 spots for me.
Yep, like it. So he said he asked for Jalen Hurts, which is bold that guy would trade Jalen Hurts knowing he doesn't have a quarterback, but asked for Hurts, Myers, and Aaron Jones for Stafford, Flacco, and Ramondre. He countered with Stafford, May, and Ramondre. Would you upgrade Myers to DK Metcalf? Well, Metcalf is hurt, so I don't really want to I know they don't think it's a long-term thing with DK. Getting Jalen Hurts is obviously a win, but then yours 2 quarterbacks are Hurts and what was his QB?
Purdy. I think it's Hurts and Purdy. That's fine.
Purdy's legit. I might just say okay and take Jacoby Myers there. Again, Myers has been really good. If you're suggesting that you might be able to work DK in there for a pittance, then sure, right? Sure. But the deal that he countered with is one that I would be happy accepting. Yeah, he countered with Stafford, May, and Ramondre for Aaron Jones, Jalen Hurts, and Jacoby Myers. Yeah, I mean that seems like a win. But if you could get DK Metcalf over Myers, sure, that's Hurts, DK Metcalf, and Aaron Jones for Stafford, May, and Ramondre Stevenson. That's a win. Yeah. What else we got here? Gesicki or Kincaid this week? What do we think? Kincaid's got Indy.
Oh, I'm gonna say Kincaid. That's how I have it ranked. I should be clear. Gesicki clearly has a wider role in this offense when T. Higgins is not on the field. You mentioned earlier that Burton is warming up and expected to play. And also we have a pretty good track record of Mike Gesicki going absolutely nuclear and then doing nothing for several weeks to follow.
Yep.
And I don't willingly insert that type of volatility into my lineup.
I understand. Yeah, I agree with you. So I would go Kincaid. He had 10 targets last week. We still don't know what Amari Cooper is going through here, and it's a really good matchup against the Colts. So
expect to be without Coleman as well, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Coleman could be out as well. So go Kincaid there, Josh. Anthony, thanks. She also says hit the like button. Yeah, hit that like, share, subscribe. Free way to support the work we're doing here over at Fantasy Alarm. We got the 7-day free trial going on as well. You can scan that QR code. YB said another tight end question. Full PPR, Otten or Andrews? No likely tonight. So maybe more snaps going Andrews' way, and we got Cade Otton against the 49ers. Kind of a tough spot there, but he's been really good.
I'm going Otten here, and I've been probably one of the more vocal Mark Andrews apologists out there. Right, we're talking about the guys that I have ranked 4th and 5th among tight ends, so splitting hairs. But I mean, Otten has been the focal point of this offense, and he's absolutely answered the bell as his name has been called. And like I mentioned a couple times over now, doesn't look like a sure thing that Sterling Shepard is going to be available. So if there wasn't already a deluge of targets going Otten's way, potentially incrementally more this week. So I would go Otten up the 2.
Sure, I like that. Next question, we got stashing McMillan or Tillman?
Cedric, not Peanut. I will much rather stash Cedric Tillman.
Yeah, Cedric Tillman's been really good. I would definitely go there.
I think he's beyond stash territory, right?
Yeah, you're playing.
Starting conversation.
I would. Yeah, I'm starting him in some leagues as well. Would you gift drop Quentin Johnson or Keenan Allen for Keaton Mitchell? What's the expectation for Keaton Mitchell? Right, you need an injury to Derrick Henry for Keaton Mitchell to have any level of consistent value here. So
yeah, I'm not following the premise here either.
So you think it'd be a gift to drop Quentin Johnson or Keenan Allen to the rest of his league to pick up Keaton Mitchell? You don't need Keaton Mitchell. I don't know how much Keaton Mitchell is going to play. You have DK, Cup. DK's hurt right now. Cup has been hurt in the past. T. Higgins is hurt. You need all the wide receivers you can kind of get at this moment. So I would keep your wide receivers there, Chris.
Yeah, I've got a similar point of view. Really, the only person who should be prioritizing Keaton Mitchell is the Derrick Henry manager.
Agreed. Flowers or Brown tonight if we're doing DFS, I assume.
I would go with Chase Brown of those two. I get the sneaking suspicion. None of the models are showing this, so this is pure gut instinct and narrative street. I get the sneaking suspicion that the acquisition of Khalil Herbert is going to draw down Chase Brown's ownership more than it should tonight.
I agree,
and I like that.
It could be bad. Plus, you know, last week it was 30% snap share for Deontay Johnson. He had no targets, but it was his first game on a short week. Short week again for him, but I mean, you know, I got to assume he's playing 30, like second game. They might try to get him more involved.
Likely he's not available, right? There are more targets to be had as well.
Yeah, something like that. Exactly. We did this one already. Was this a repeat? It was a repeat. He meant to say guys, not gift, so we got that. I feel like Henry's taking on a lot. Mitchell could get mixed in a bit. I don't think so. Henry's the guy there. He'll get some carries, sure, but it's not enough that you would ever play Keaton Mitchell, flex or anything like that. So,
yeah, Keaton Mitchell is not Derrick Henry. He's not Devon Achane, where he can get less than 10 carries and be fantasy viable every single week, right? No. He's handcuffed territory if nothing else.
Yep, purely a handcuff play. Start 4: Adams, Mooney, Connor, Nakua, or Tyreek Hill. Assuming that's not Taysom. Assuming it's Tyreek.
Yeah. If it is Taysom, smell you later, bud.
Yes.
Assuming that it's Tyreek, I would start Tyreek along with Puka, along with Connor, and along with Devontae Adams.
Okay. If London is out, does that change anything for you at Mooney? It's the Saints this week.
I mean, it certainly does. It doesn't change my answer, though. Okay. I think that those are still the same 4. It moves Mooney from. I mean, it moves him up probably 5 or 6 spots, right? He's already ranked pretty high.
Sure.
Shout out to the kid having a breakout year.
I agree 100% there. So that's your question so far. If you guys have any more, throw them in there. We got a guy from the Twitch gang popping in. Seems like it could be a bot. Who knows? We'll throwing some emojis in here. If you got any fantasy football questions, you can throw them in there. We'll be happy to help you guys out. Again, the slate's locks night for DFS at 8:15. Let's pull up the DraftKings board and maybe we can get a little a lineup going for everybody. Where do we get it? There we go. Hide the chat somewhere. There it is. Hide the question. All right, let's see if we can build a lineup. If you had to pick a captain for tonight, which direction do you want to
go? I really like the potential leverage of firing up Chase Brown as a captain. I
Okay.
think that, like we said, he's going to be more overlooked than he should be. In terms of just raw scoring, I think that Jamar Chase has the highest likelihood of scoring the most points, so he should also be in that captain conversation. But
I like
beyond that,
Brown because it'll help you get a couple of these guys in there as well. I think given the news about Burton, we need to throw him in there at 2,200. Help kind of with some of the salaries here. All right, so we got 7,800. We got Brown, Burton, and Bengals. We got 3 Bengals. If you had to pick Henry or Jackson, you got to lean.
so this might actually be where we kind of separate ourselves from the field. I would actually lean Jackson over Henry, and
Okay.
in that instance, not rostering Henry at all is a great way to create leverage on tonight's slate. He's still Derrick Henry, phenomenal player, has the legitimate opportunity to take every single touch to the house. I worry about his touch volume tonight, right? I could see this one being much more of an air raid, and him maybe settling in at like 14 or 15 carries instead of his typical
And he had
18, 19,
15
20.
for 92, was able to find the touchdown. He had that long run at the end of that game against Cincinnati.
Yeah, prior to that, the people that rostered him were not having a good time, right?
Not having a good time. I was definitely one of those people. So, and then you saw him bounce right back the next week, 132 on 224 and 2 scores. So, yeah, I like that. So I just plugged in Andrews because, again, a little more salary leverage. 7,900 unfortunately doesn't get us like any next tier. So as we say at showdown slates, you can always just have some extra money left over. We can kind of move things around. If you had to pick like a Bengals receiver, would you, or Gesicki, Bateman, or Deontay Johnson? Do you do any of the kickers? Like, what are your thoughts here?
I think I might actually lean Deontay Johnson of this lot, right? You've got Jackson, so you're now correlated with 2 receivers because of the low snap count and the low productivity last week. I don't think he's going to be all that popular.
Sure.
So that would be my lean in that range of price tag.
Okay. If I remove Burton, it gives us 5,300, which basically would give us McPherson as a kicker. If we wanted to go there, or we can just, like you said, just have some money left over. 3,100 is a lot of money to have left over, though. So
yeah, that is a fair amount of money.
We flip maybe. I know you said that would be your leverage of Brown and captain, but can we flip that? Chase Brown, still a lot of money left over. $2,200. He's so cheap.
Yeah,
it's kind of wild.
I would almost say that if we decide to flip that and put Chase and the captain, then I definitely want to get into the Joe Burrow business, right?
Okay.
So you have that correlation.
Do we flip back to Derrick Henry here? Burton.
Where's all this money coming from?
Oh, it's because Burton's $2,200. He's so cheap.
Yeah.
We're not playing Gesicki, obviously, which I think a lot of people will be in on.
And man, that's sub 5K range, right? Like, I mean, Burton, we talked about, pivoting over to Keaton Mitchell in that sub 3K range, but Andrews and Deontay Johnson both sitting sub 5K. That gives you a ton of flexibility tonight.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different directions that can be done here again, and on showdown slates, it's okay to have money left over. So again, if you're
not only okay, advisable, right? Like that's
right.
one of the great ways to break yourself up from those payout chunks that kind of clump together.
Agreed. So just an example lineup for you guys to kind of go and take a look at tonight's slate if you want to have some fun over on DraftKings. We'll answer these last couple of questions here, and we'll get out in time for everybody to set their lineups and get ready for inactives and roster lock and all that other good stuff to come through here. That is not the button I wanted to hit. Let's see. That's the button? That's the button. We got Brown or Dobbins, PPR.
Ooh, in PPR, I have Brown by a pretty good margin. This defense that Dobbins is facing, the Titans, is above average against the run, but also Dobbins hasn't really looked too good in recent weeks, right? Like he's still getting the volume, which is fantastic, but he doesn't seem to have the same pop that he did through the first couple weeks of the season.
Hey, Gus Edwards is supposed to be coming off IR. All reports was he practiced in full and he's feeling 100%. What does that mean for Dobbins? Probably not much, but Gus Edwards was brought in. He was hurt early. He didn't really look that good. Dobbins started off to a quick start, but like you said, if Dobbins starting to come back down, they might be looking to give other opportunities to Edwards. Maybe they leapfrog each other there. So I would go Brown. Twitch Gang fam saying he loves our content. Well, we appreciate you tuning in.
Love you.
Travis says we start Brown. We need to tell him right now.
Yes.
Yes, because I don't know what the rest of your team looks like. So.
And unless you have 2 to 3 running backs that are inside the top 10 in rankings, it's almost universally yes.
Yeah, you're gonna play Brown because I don't know what else you can. And then we got Chase Brown, Mooney, or D Hop. Start one.
Ooh, that's tricky. I'm still going Brown here. Kind of like you mentioned, right? Like I feel the most secure in his workload tonight relative to weeks to come.
Sure.
His skill set is one that can still flourish in really any game script that plays out tonight. Mooney is doing well. I don't think he has quite the same upside as Brown. And I certainly don't want to risk the opportunity or risk the chance of missing out on Chase Brown while I wait for a Darnell or for a Drake London decision.
Yeah, and D Hop's got to deal with Surtain in this matchup against Denver this weekend. So tougher spot for him there. So
no doubt.
All right, guys. Appreciate you all tuning in. Good luck with week 10. Thursday Night Football. Ravens and Bengals should be a fun one. We'll be back on Sunday, 11 a.m. to get you ready for the Sunday slate of games. Till then, everybody, we'll catch you later.